Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Rich Clark, Guide to the Right Path. So I spoke yesterday about depression part 1 and the different types. So today I'm actually going to put part 2 and part 3 together. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, with this, how would I help someone with depression? So I'm going to talk about 3 techniques I use, which is CBT, hypnotherapy, and psychotherapy. I'm going to also explain then a case study and how I help that person with depression. So I'm going to explain a few things today within this talk. So the first one is, when I'm talking about therapeutic methods to do with depression, again, I'll explain depression again. Depression is the mindset or physical need of how we deal with this and how we feel at a low and so forth. Again, please listen to part 1 for the more explanations of the different types. So the first thing I'd do is, so therapeutic methods I'd use are here the following. So the first one I'd use is cognitive behavior therapy. So this is CBT, and this works with restructuring and challenging the cognitive patterns of negative thoughts. So what does that mean, the restructuring? Imagine that when you've got a computer and you defrag it, you imagine that you're actually cleaning it up. So what it is you're restructuring the way the brain works. Now, I talked about Hegel's dialectic the other day, but restructuring and challenging the behavior, the patterns, is part of what we do as a therapist, especially this, is to challenge this. So if someone has a thought pattern of, this is why I'm this, you have to challenge this, like, why? And is it benefiting you? Is it serving you? And changing that. That's how you would restructure the cognitive patterns of negative thoughts. Also about, how do they look at everything you give them an example and see how they react to it? Do they always come up with the negative at every single thing they talk about, which you present to them? See, so that's sometimes, is it something they do all the time, or is it only for certain things what trigger them? The reframing and restructuring is the engagement in activities by increased reward. So the issue is, many people believe that if they do something, they need a reward in it. There's no intrinsic reward of just actually doing something. So you have to kind of change the way people act within that. So this is sometimes an issue what we see within childhood as well, is that many people, they see that if they do very well, they get a reward. And sometimes that isn't actually how the world works. Sometimes actually the reward is the challenge, that someone's really had something which challenged them and they got through it, and that is the reward itself, that they actually managed to get through it. That can be just as rewarding as just someone who is just instantly good at everything. Because some people, when they're actually are rewarded all the time for being great at something, when they actually have the all or nothing issue, is when they don't do very well, then they go into depressive mode, or they end up going into this, oh, everything's bad. They're overly hypercritical. So they have to, so that's about creating the balance. And CBT is very helpful with doing this. The other thing with CBT methods I use is creating effective techniques for the client to solve any problem that occurs. So these creative, effective techniques is when something happens where they are struggling, is actually positioning them, giving them the tools in their mind, as well as how they would also physically and mentally, auditory, kinesthetically. Kinesthetically is touch, feel, and so forth. Auditory is by hearing, and then or a visual is by seeing that problem and how you can break that down. So the brain then works in a different way. So then you can see a problem, and in the brain already, it's breaking it down into different things. And seeing it as a problem or a negative, it sees as, right, this is what I need to do first, taking smaller incremental steps to overcome it. So with hypnotherapy, how would I use it? Well, hypnotherapy, I would curate a future visualization reframed into a positive mindset. So again, very much like the CBT, because remember, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is from hypnotherapy. It's an offshoot. So creating future visualization is showing the person that if they are not negative and they do something in a positive mindset, there is a reward, but not just the reward, which is which you'd want to just get away from. It's actually that there is a goal there. So it changes that mindset. And the changing that positive mindset is that everything they do then leads to that, so they can actually see that future issue. And that's why a lot of people who actually have a form of depression and so forth, and anxiety and motivation, that's why they go to a lot of readers, like tarot readers, they go to a lot of psychics, they go to all these different things. But instead of actually going to someone who can actually help them get their answers from them inner selves, from their intrinsic self, they would rather go to outsourcing. And it's because they don't trust their own inner guidance, and that needs to change. So hypnotherapy, that is where you work with that. Also, we work in timeline or age regression to address the root causes. So the timeline therapy is where we go back to the age of where they first got their negative thoughts. What made them negative? Was it because they did something they thought was really good and their parents dismissed them, and that has affected them all them going into their adult life? These little things, which to some people could seem very minute, to someone else can be major to the way they behave and the way they think. And we have to look at these things. And some things that can actually go back as far with age regression into even something from the womb, that somehow that they felt that the person who was carrying them actually made them feel negative. They felt that there was no point in them being born. They could, because this is what the mother's energy does to the child. So these are certain things. They can go back as far as that, but usually they're usually from the ages, I would say, from about age of 3 back to the age of 8 roughly, but then we do get some in adolescence. But that is on average about 70 to 80% is usually in that childhood range from like, one is usually a bit too young, but sometimes we do get it. It's about the age of 8. And that's how we can change it. So also the other thing as well with hypnotherapy, we also train self-hypnosis techniques for ongoing management during and after sessions. So the actual self-hypnosis techniques, which is also linked with breathing techniques, which I'll mention in Psychotherapy Tools. We use this to help with the ongoing management and helping these during sessions. So the actual thing is that you will actually get into like a trance state, that you get out of the negative. So as soon as you start feeling that negative mindset, you should go into that and you change it to the positive. And this is the difference between when you work with people who are proactive and reactive. You really want to work with people who are more proactive, so you don't have the people who are reactive, because reactive people are generally negative because they see things and then they react to it. Oh, I've got to deal with it. Whereas actually proactive people do not want to have something negative come up. So they actually are proactive to create that positive mindset. And people who are proactive are usually very much will help you in business, but not only business, they help you in relationships. It's great in relationships because they're also very much want to, if they see something negative happen, they want to fix it. And it's a really good thing. And I think we should all look for that more in people. So Psychotherapy Tools is creating a journal to record the mood changes and the stimulus to that. So creating a journal and if you can't create a journal writing because you don't like writing is better because it's more intrinsically, it comes from source where it works spiritually, right? People may not believe this, but it does. If you think about it, it's like a download, yeah? And you write it. But if you use voice notes, it's the same. Voice notes are really helpful. And now with the way of AI, we can use voice notes and that can translate it into writing. And this is really useful to help, even with my work, is now I'm getting with Zoom, is that you can actually use, it can actually write the scripts of what you've been talking to people about so they can read it if they don't want to listen and so forth. And sometimes because people read things more, they take it in more than they do just listening. Everybody's different, remember? So other psychological tools is breath work, or in the Indian tradition, it's pranayama, exercises to change his levels of motivation. So we would do that. So how do we motivate ourselves? How would we use Satali for that sort of a breath, or do we use like deeper breathing? Do we use gradual breathing? All these different things can help with your level of motivation. And actually also, I would say daily meditation as well in the morning is meditate and visualize what you can see, what's going to happen during the day. Because this is what most people don't do, is that some people actually get up negative, but if you if you get up negative, right, go into meditation, go into self-hypnosis and change that. That's the only way you can change your level of motivation. It's not the only way, but it's one of the best ways of doing it. And it also because you start off the day in a better mood, and then over time you will see things. And actually, the more you do it, you will see things how they actually go positive, and you'll see how they click into place. Very useful. Another thing as well is setting up schedules that help regular activities versus sleep hygiene. So when their activity is what they do, so they don't overpower themselves or over insult themselves, is actually to get the balance right. And the sleeping pattern, because the sleeping pattern issue, especially with depression, is that people then believe sleeping in is they're rejecting the world. Whereas actually, as much as we like to reject the world is what we live in. So we have to, I mean, unless you live in a fantasy world, which some people, that's lovely, but not for the average person. So you can work with that. Now, I'm going to explain about this in a case study, how I worked with someone with this. And I'm just going to go into some recent research. So a 2023 case study in Nature Neuroscience identified a specific neural circuit in the lateral habenula region linked to depression. And this is suggesting new therapeutic targets. So what people have been doing, they think of depression is all very on the surface, but actually there is actually things where the brain is then trained, and it can, and this is why it's younger, because it's intrinsically done with the brain has been trained by conditioning to be negative. So the research demonstrated how stress affects this circuit, potentially explaining why some individuals are more susceptible to depression. So stress-related issues can also lead to depression. So if people can't handle stress, then they usually go into depression. If people can handle stress more, because like I said, if people are more proactive, then they can handle that more and would less likely fall into depression. People also with autism as well would also go into depression because they find that the world is so difficult and it can be exhausting trying to understand the world, which to them they see that it's very heightened for them or oversensitive. Anyway, so usually these treatments per study have shown effective improvement when combining therapies and multiple methods. Hence why I use multiple methods with my clients, not just using CBT only, not only psychotherapy or life coaching. You use a mixture of methods to get the best results. So the difference is 60 to 70% results from integrated therapy compared to 40 to 50% with one modality treatment. So integrated therapy is really the way forward for any therapist, is to be multiple faceted in that. So I'm going to explain about this case study. So this case study is a client of mine is Lauren, and she's 34, single mother, presented major depressive disorder following a job loss, which was her main income. She'd been in this job for like 6 years, and I'd known her, just as within that work she was doing. And the developed system after this event included erratic insomnia, withdrawal from social activities, and constant negative self-talk. And this was someone who wasn't like this. She was very upbeat. So we had to find out why this was. So this is the stress thing which changed her behavior. So in this field, many will usually recommend 12 weeks or sessions of CBT combined with hypnotherapy. And the client will develop coping strategies and experience significant symptom reductions. Now, how I've done this is myself, I guided her through this issue with my arcprogramme, which consisted of 3 2-hour sessions. And so I cut nearly cutting into like of 6 weeks of sessions worth of therapy. And this is because I found out with this person, I found out the exact reason with a timeline therapy and age regression to address the root cause. The person, why they was always upbeat, because they actually had a negative childhood and they were always put down. So they always were upbeat. But once they lost the job, they lost their meaning of who they were. And it was because it's about status for them. So we had to work that out. So due to this, integrating her back to normal life was removing the sleep deprivation and insomnia while invigorating to apply for other jobs, which she was successful with, and improving her socialization skills. So for her issue was the sleep deprivation because she wasn't someone who she was very active. So it was about working out why she wanted to sleep, and we worked out, and it was a lot of trauma for her to deal with. But we had to remove it. And we also looked at, as an adult, how she was more in control of her life as an adult compared to as a child. And we removed that block from the child, reframed it to change it so that person then felt, I'm good enough to do this. Look what I've accomplished through all the negative thoughts I was taught, but as in a child and adolescence, but look where I've achieved. And in fact, the job she actually applied for was actually better than the job she'd lost. And in fact, she was actually paid a lot better money. She's been treated better, and her job has improved, and also her social skills. So actually now she's in a better environment. She feels better about herself. And this wasn't just always down, the person also rebuilt herself because the self-motivation was there originally. It was just that little crux of that stress changed her. So this is why with therapy, it is very important to sometimes that people may not show all these the signs, but that one incident can change everything. And then that is because they've blocked it. And the idea is not just unblocking things to get people in a status of trauma. It's actually to remove that trauma. So then going forward, they can see that progression and growth of what they want to achieve. So if you are struggling with depression, or you're struggling with anxiety, of worried about things, or you're lacking the self-motivation, and that negative mindset is bugging you, or it's really debilitating your growth going forward, please go to www.richclark.net and please book with me a discovery call, which is all free. And within that, as of the next week, I'll be setting up mini sessions. So these actually, though we discovered the mini sessions are going to be cheaper than the normal sessions. And this is to do, so you actually experience in this mini session what my work is, how I help you. And then within that, it's about where you go forward with a program. Now, none of this is obligation. This is all non-obligation because it's discovery call. There is a lot of work I do with this where I help you with this. But the one thing is, even if you don't want to carry on with me, I will give you some basic tools, enough of, to help you whatever your issue is to start. And sometimes it may do them basic tools. You start seeing in 2-3 weeks growth, but you just know you need that extra help. And that's where you would go to my program. So until next time, I shall speak to you soon.